The wind screamed across the Montana ridge like a wounded animal, carrying with it the scent of pine and impending snow. Sarah Mitchell's fingers were so numb she could barely feel the gold wedding band as she twisted it off her finger. 3 days without food. 2 nights sleeping in a hollow tree. One last possession worth trading for survival. The trading post squatted against the mountain like a tired old bear, its wooden walls weathered gray by countless winters. Inside, tobacco smoke hung thick in the air. Sarah's legs trembled as she approached the counter, her thin cotton dress, once white, now the color of trail dust, offering no protection against the October cold of 1877. "Please," she whispered to the bearded clerk, extending her shaking hand with the ring. "Just some bread. Anything." The clerk's eyes narrowed with practiced cruelty. "That ring ain't worth the tarnish on it, lady. Now if you're offering something else, the lady won't be trading anything." Before we continue with Sarah and this mysterious stranger's story, I'd love to ask you a favor. If you're enjoying this tale, please take a moment to subscribe to the From Wild West channel and hit that like button. It truly means the world to us and motivates us to bring you more quality stories like this one. Your support helps us keep these adventures coming. Now, let's get back to Sarah. The voice came from the doorway, deep and steady as bedrock. Sarah turned to see a man silhouetted against the harsh afternoon light, broad shoulders blocking the entrance, hat pulled low. As he stepped inside, she caught her breath. He stood well over 6 feet, with the kind of build that came from splitting logs and wrestling steers, not vanity. His face was weathered bronze, sharp jaw shadowed with stubble, and a thin scar traced from his left eyebrow into his hairline. But it was his eyes that held her, gray as winter smoke, and looking at her with something she hadn't seen in years: respect. "James Blackwood," the clerk stammered. "Didn't expect—" "She needs supplies," James said, his gaze never leaving Sarah. "Put it on my account. Food, blankets, warm clothes." He moved closer, and Sarah noticed his hands, scarred, calloused, but held loose at his sides, non-threatening. "And a hot meal from the kitchen." Sarah's pride flared despite her desperation. "I don't take charity, sir." "Not charity." His mouth quirked slightly. "My ranch is 10 miles west. Been looking for someone who can cook, tend the house. You'd be earning your keep." He nodded toward her ring, still clutched in her white-knuckle fist. "Gold isn't what I need. A person who's willing to work, that's worth something real." The clerk snorted. "You're gonna trust some random woman wandering the—" "Load the supplies." James's voice went cold as January steel. The clerk shut his mouth. Sarah studied this stranger's face, searching for the trap. Men didn't help without wanting something. Her late husband had taught her that with his fists. The creditor who'd taken their failing farm had proven it with his leering promises of other arrangements. She'd run before dawn broke, choosing starvation over that particular hell. But James Blackwood's eyes held no schemes. Just a bone-deep weariness that matched her own. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Because 3 years ago, someone showed my sister mercy when she needed it." His jaw tightened. "Didn't get the chance to pay that debt forward before she—" he cleared his throat. "This is me trying." Sarah's hand closed around the ring. She met his gaze directly, summoning the last shreds of her dignity. "I work hard, I don't steal, and I don't—" She paused, making sure he understood. "I don't trade anything but honest labor. Wouldn't ask you to." He tipped his hat slightly. "My ranch has a separate cabin, door locks from inside. You'll have privacy. It was the detail about the lock that decided her. A manipulator wouldn't think of that. "Then I accept, Mr. Blackwood." "James." He turned to the counter. "Get the lady that meal while I load the wagon." The Blackwood Ranch sprawled across a valley cupped between mountain ranges, where golden prairie grass rippled like water in the wind. The main house was solid timber, built to withstand brutal winters, with a wide porch that caught the afternoon sun. 50 yards away stood a smaller cabin, weathered but sturdy, with a stone chimney already releasing a thin trail of smoke. "Had the hands fire up the stove this morning," James said, helping Sarah down from the wagon. His hands on her waist were brief, impersonal, but she still flinched at the contact. He noticed, releasing her immediately and stepping back. "Sorry." "No, Sarah wrapped her arms around herself. "I'm not accustomed to gentleness." Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "Someone hurt you?" It wasn't a question. Sarah lifted her chin. "My past is my own, Mr. Blackwood." "James," he corrected quietly. "And you're right. I just meant—" He pushed his hat back, revealing sun-lightened brown hair that needed cutting. "Nobody will touch you here. You have my word." His word. As if that meant something. But watching him unload supplies with efficient strength, never once invading her space or making her feel cornered, Sarah felt a dangerous thing unfurl in her chest. Hope. The cabin's interior smelled of fresh pine and wood smoke. A narrow bed stood in one corner, covered with a quilt showing careful stitching. A table, 2 chairs, a washstand with a real mirror. Hooks by the door for coats. A stack of firewood beside the stone hearth. Simple, clean, safe. "Kitchen's in the main house," James said from the doorway, respecting the threshold. "Figure you'll want to settle in today. Work starts tomorrow. Dawn comes early. I'll knock at 5:30. Main meals are breakfast and supper. Hands eat at noon in the bunkhouse." He set down a crate of provisions. "Coffee, beans, dried meat, in case you want privacy for your meals." "That's—" Sarah's throat tightened. "Thoughtful." He shrugged, uncomfortable with gratitude. "Barn's got chickens if you want fresh eggs. Creek water's clean." He backed toward the door, then paused. "I meant what I said, about the lock. Use it if it makes you feel secure. Won't offend me none." After he left, Sarah stood in the center of her new home, the first space that was truly hers in years, and wept. Dawn painted the mountains purple and gold when James's knock came. Sarah had been awake for an hour, unused to sleeping without fear. She'd washed in the cold creek water, braided her dark blonde hair, and put on the simple calico dress James had provided. A bit large, but clean and whole. The main house kitchen was enormous, built to feed a dozen ranch hands. Cast iron pans hung from ceiling hooks. A massive stove dominated one wall, already hot. Sacks of flour and cornmeal stood in the corner like sentries. "Coffee first," James said, moving to the stove with practiced ease. He poured 2 cups from a battered pot, handed her one. "Then I'll show you where everything is." They worked in companionable silence as the sun crested the mountains. James explained the rhythms of ranch life, the hands' preferences, the stores in the cellar, the vegetable garden that his sister had planted before. He didn't finish that sentence. Sarah didn't push. By 7, she had biscuits in the oven and bacon sizzling. By 8, 5 hungry cowboys filed in, hats in hands, nodding respectfully at Miss Sarah before demolishing breakfast. By 9, she'd cleaned up and started preparations for supper. Her hands, remembering the rhythms of kitchen work that had once been her only joy in a joyless marriage. James appeared in the doorway as she kneaded bread dough. "You didn't have to make fresh bread." "I wanted to." Sarah punched the dough, working out tension. "Haven't had a proper kitchen in how long?" "A while." He leaned against the doorframe, watching her work, not leering, just present, solid. "You bake like someone who loves it." "I do." She shaped the dough into loaves. "My grandmother taught me. Said bread was the heart of a home." The memory brought bittersweet warmth. She also said, "Never trust a man who doesn't appreciate good bread." James's laugh was rusty, like he didn't use it much. Smart woman. She was. Sarah covered the loaves with a cloth. "Raised me after my parents died of fever. Tried to warn me about, etc." She caught herself. Too much, too soon. But James's expression had gentled. "About the man you married." Sarah's hands stilled. "How did you—" "Ring on your finger left a mark." He straightened, suddenly awkward. "And the way you flinch when someone moves too quick?" "Seen it before. In horses that have been broken cruel." His eyes met hers. "You're not property, Sarah. You're a person, worth more than you know." The simple declaration hit her harder than any of her husband's blows. Sarah gripped the table edge, fighting unexpected tears. "You don't even know me. Don't need to know your whole story to see you're stronger than whatever tried to break you." He moved toward the door, then paused. "I lost my sister Margaret 3 years ago. Cholera. Before she died, she made me promise something." His voice roughened. "Said I'd gotten too hard, too alone. Made me swear I'd let people back in." He turned, meeting her eyes. "Didn't think I could, till you walked into that trading post." Then he was gone, leaving Sarah staring after him, her heart beating a strange, frightened rhythm she hadn't felt in years. The days settled into routine. Sarah rose before dawn, lost herself in the alchemy of cooking, transforming simple ingredients into meals that brought satisfied silence to the dinner table. The ranch hands treated her with rough courtesy, and James was everywhere and nowhere, teaching her to ride the gentle mare he'd assigned her, showing her how to shoot the rifle he'd hung by her cabin door, just in case, appearing at twilight to chop her firewood despite her protests. "Part of the job," he'd say, muscles flexing as the axe fell. Sarah tried not to watch, tried not to notice how his shirt stuck to his back with honest sweat, how his hands, so large and scarred, were impossibly gentle when he caught a barn cat for her to pet. 2 weeks in, a late storm rolled through. Sarah was measuring flour when thunder cracked so loud the windows rattled. She didn't mean to drop the bowl, didn't mean to cry out. But suddenly, she was back in that farmhouse, her husband's rage like thunder, his fists like lightning. "Sarah!" James's hands hovered near her shoulders, not touching, waiting. "It's just a storm. You're safe." She couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the terror flooding her veins. I can't, look at me." His voice cut through the panic. "Right here, I'm right here." Sarah forced her eyes to his face. James had crouched to her level, gray eyes steady as stone. "That's good. Now breathe with me. In." He inhaled slowly. "Out." He exhaled. She matched him, once, twice, until her lungs remembered their rhythm. Rain hammered the roof like drums. More thunder. She flinched, but James stayed solid, present, a shelter that didn't crowd. He used to. Sarah swallowed. The storms made him angry. Everything made him angry, but storms were worse. James's jaw tightened, dangerously. Where is he now? Dead. The word should have brought relief. It only brought numbness. Fell off his horse. Drunk. Broke his neck. Good. The viciousness in that single word startled her. James saw her expression and shook his head. Won't apologize. Man who beats a woman doesn't deserve breath. He stood slowly, careful not to loom. My father was the same. Watched him terrorize my mother till she got sick. Died before I was big enough to stop him. His hands clenched. Margaret and I survived by protecting each other. When he died, we swore we'd never be like him, never make someone afraid in their own home. Sarah stood on shaking legs. Outside, lightning flashed. She didn't flinch this time. I'm not usually this weak. You're not weak. James moved to the stove, stirring the stew she'd forgotten. You're healing. There's a difference. They finished preparing supper together, working in sync as the storm raged outside. When the hands came in soaked and complaining, Sarah served them with steady hands. But that night, lying in her cabin listening to rain drum the roof, she realized something terrifying. James Blackwood was becoming important to her. October surrendered to November. The ranch prepared for winter like an army fortifying for siege. Sarah learned to preserve vegetables, smoke meat, make candles against the long darkness ahead. And slowly, so gradually she barely noticed, the knot of fear in her chest began to loosen. James taught her to ride properly, not side saddle like a lady, but astride, free and fast. They'd race across the prairie at sunset, her laughter mixing with wind and hoofbeats, both of them wild and young and alive. When she fell, which she did, spectacularly trying to jump a creek, he'd been beside her in seconds. Don't move. His hands checked her limbs with impersonal efficiency. Anything broken? Just my pride. Sarah tried to sit up and gasped as pain lanced through her left ankle. That's swelling already. James crouched, his fingers gentle on her boot. Going to hurt when I take this off. Can you handle it, or should I? Do it. He unlaced with care. But when the boot came free, Sarah bit back a cry. I know, James murmured. Go slow, breathe through it. She gripped his shoulder, focusing on his solidity rather than the pain. He didn't rush, didn't make her feel foolish, just eased the boot off and examined her ankle with those impossibly gentle hands. Not broken, bad sprained though. He stood, then bent and lifted her as if she weighed nothing. Sarah stiffened instinctively. It hurts when I... She stopped, realizing how close his face was, how his eyes had darkened. Don't move too fast. James froze, his arms careful bands around her. I'll die before I hurt you, he said quietly. You understand me? I would die first. The intensity in his voice stole her breath. Sarah nodded, unable to speak, and carefully let herself lean against his chest as he carried her home. He settled her on her cabin's bed with infinite care, then disappeared, returned with bandages and a jar of salve that smelled of wintergreen, knelt beside the bed and wrapped her ankle with hands that didn't quite shake. James, Sarah caught his wrist. His pulse jumped under her fingers. Thank you for everything. His eyes met hers, and something raw flickered there. Want, loneliness, hope. But he just nodded, set the salve on the table, and left before she could name the feeling rising in her own chest. The injury forced proximity. Sarah couldn't work, so James brought meals to her cabin. They ate together as twilight painted the mountains, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about growing up rough in Wyoming, How Margaret had been his only softness in a brutal world. How he'd built this ranch from nothing after their father died. Trying to create something clean. Sarah found herself telling him things she'd buried. Her grandmother's stories. The joy she'd felt on her wedding day before she learned what her husband truly was. The slow death of hope. "I thought I deserved it," she admitted one night. Firelight dancing across her face. The beatings. "Thought I must have done something wrong." Or, "No." James leaned forward, elbows on knees. "Listen to me. You could have burned his dinner every night and cussed him out every morning, and you still wouldn't have deserved that. Nobody does." "My grandmother used to say the same thing," Sarah smiled sadly. "But knowing something and believing it are different." "Then believe this." His voice dropped, intimate as a prayer. "I see you, Sarah Mitchell. See the woman who faced starvation before she'd compromise her dignity, who makes bread like an artist and rides like she's racing the wind, who's kind to stray cats and patient with rough cowboys, and braver than any soldier I've met." He paused. "I see a woman worth—" He stopped, jaw tight. "Worth what?" Sarah whispered. "Worth saving." The words sounded torn from him. "Worth fighting for. Worth." He stood abruptly. "Your ankle's healing well. Should be back to work in a few days." Then he was gone, leaving Sarah with her heart pounding and a truth she could no longer deny. She was falling in love with James Blackwood. December roared in, with a blizzard that lasted 3 days. Sarah moved into the main house's spare room at James's insistence. Too dangerous to navigate to her cabin in whiteout conditions. The ranch hands huddled in the bunkhouse. And suddenly, it was just the two of them. The storm howling outside, while warmth and firelight wrapped around them like a cocoon. They cooked together, played checkers, read aloud from his small library of battered books. At night, Sarah lay in bed listening to James move through the house, knowing he was close, feeling safer than she'd ever felt. On the third night, she woke to shouting, stumbled into the hall to find James in the grip of a nightmare, thrashing against enemies only he could see. "James!" Sarah grabbed his shoulder. He came awake swinging. His hand caught her across the cheek. Not hard, but unexpected. She stumbled back. Horror filled his face as consciousness returned. "God, Sarah, I was dreaming." "I know." Her cheek stung, but her heart hurt worse seeing his anguish. "It's okay." "It's not okay." He was on his feet, shaking. "I swore I'd never. Christ, I'm just like him." "No." Sarah stepped close, cupping his face with both hands, making him look at her. "You're nothing like him. Nothing. You were asleep, having a nightmare. That's different from, I hate you. You were fighting demons. I startled you awake." She stroked his scarred jaw, feeling him tremble. "James, you've never once raised a hand to me in anger. Never used your strength to frighten me. Never made me feel small or worthless or scared." Her thumbs traced his cheekbones. "You've made me feel safe. Do you understand? For the first time in years, I feel safe." He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch like a man starving for gentleness. "I don't deserve you." "Maybe we deserve each other," Sarah whispered. His eyes opened, storm gray and full of desperate want. "If I kiss you right now, I won't be able to stop at just one." "Then don't stop." The kiss was tender at first, tentative, both of them so careful with the fragile thing building between them. But then his arms came around her, and she pressed closer, and careful, gave way to something desperate and true. His mouth tasted like coffee and promises. His hands cradled her like she was precious. When they finally broke apart, breathless, his forehead rested against hers. "Stay with me," he whispered. "Not just for work. Stay because you want to. Because I—" His voice cracked. "Because I love you, Sarah. Have for weeks. Tried not to, but you're in my bones now." Sarah's answer was another kiss, deeper this time, full of all the words she'd learned not to trust. But with James, she wanted to try again, wanted to believe again. "Together," she breathed against his lips. "Together," he agreed, and kissed her until the storm outside seemed distant as a memory. Winter deepened. James taught Sarah to track game in snow, to read weather in the sky, to survive if she ever found herself alone. But it was clear she wouldn't be alone. Not anymore. They moved through days like two halves of a whole, finishing each other's thoughts, anticipating needs before they were spoken. The ranch hands noticed, started calling James boss with new warmth, treated Sarah like the lady of the house. At Christmas, they surprised her with a carved jewelry box, crude but heartfelt, and she wept into James's shoulder that night, overwhelmed by this strange new thing called belonging. "They love you," James murmured into her hair. "I love them." Sarah pulled back to look at him. "Love you. Should have said it before." His smile was like sunrise. "I know. You show me every day." January brought calm, crystalline cold. Sarah and James fell into domesticity, planning spring crops, discussing expanding the herd, dreaming aloud about the future. He'd hold her on the porch as stars wheeled overhead, both of them wrapped in blankets, and she'd think, "This is happiness, this quiet, steady, bone-deep peace." But peace, she'd learned, was always temporary. The stranger rode in on a February morning, all black clothes and cold eyes. Sarah saw him from the kitchen window and felt ice crawl down her spine. Knew him before he spoke. "That's my brother-in-law," she said quietly. James looked up from the accounts he'd been reviewing. Something dangerous entered his expression. "The one who wanted to make other arrangements for your debt? Marcus Holloway." Sarah's hands shook. "After my husband died, I couldn't pay the mortgage. Marcus offered to forgive it if I became his mistress." Her voice went flat. "Said no decent work existed for widows anyway, that I should be grateful." James was already reaching for his gun belt. "He touches you over my dead body. That might be what he's here for." Sarah gripped his arm. "Marcus doesn't lose. He has money, connections. And I have a ranch, loyal hands, and a woman I'd kill to protect." James's eyes were chips of flint. "Stay here." She watched through the window as James confronted Marcus in the yard. Couldn't hear the words, but saw Marcus's smug smile falter as James stood his ground. Saw him gesture toward the house, toward her. Saw James's hand hover near his gun. Then Marcus pulled out a document. Even from this distance, Sarah recognized the mortgage papers. Her debt, still owed, legally enforceable. James read them, and his shoulders tightened. He looked back at the house, and Sarah saw the defeat in every line of his body. No, she'd run from one cage. She wouldn't let James trade his freedom for hers. Moving on instinct, Sarah grabbed her coat and walked out into the February cold. Both men turned. Marcus's smile widened. "Sarah, looking well. Ranch life agrees with you. What do you want?" Her voice didn't shake. James shifted closer, protective, but she held up a hand. "No, this is my fight." "Fight?" Marcus laughed. "There's no fight. You owe me $1,200. Either pay up or—" He let the implication hang. "She doesn't owe you anything," James growled. "Her dead husband's debts say otherwise." Marcus folded his arms. "But I'm a reasonable man. Sarah returns with me and we'll call it settled. Otherwise," he nodded toward the papers, "Sheriff enforces this and I take the ranch for unpaid debt." "Like hell." "No." Sarah stepped between them. "James, no. You're not losing everything because of me." "You think I give a damn about this land compared to you?" James grabbed her shoulders gently. "We'll figure something out. Get a lawyer. Fight him." "With what money?" Sarah blinked back tears. "I won't destroy you, won't let you." Too late. His smile was tender despite the fury in his eyes. "Already destroyed. Don't work without you now." He turned to Marcus. "Name your price. Real price. Not this arranged mistress garbage. What would satisfy the debt in actual money?" Marcus considered. 1,500. Cash. An impossible sum. James's savings, everything he built, wouldn't cover it. Sarah saw the calculation in his face, saw him preparing to offer anyway, and knew she had to stop this. "I'll go." The words tasted like ash. "The hell you will." James's voice could have cut stone. "Marcus." Sarah forced herself to look at the man who'd haunted her nightmares. "Give us 2 weeks. I'll earn the money, pay you in full. If I can't." She swallowed bile. "I'll come willingly." "Sarah, no." 2 weeks, she repeated, ignoring James's protest. "Do we have an agreement?" Marcus studied her, then shrugged. 2 weeks. "But if you run—" His smile turned cruel. "I'll take the ranch anyway." "Insurance." After he rode out, James turned to her, barely controlled fury vibrating through every muscle. "What were you thinking?" "That I won't watch you lose everything." Sarah's own anger flared. "Won't be another burden." "Burden?" He gripped her arms. "You're my everything. Don't you understand that? I don't care about land or money or anything if you're not here." "Then help me find a solution." Sarah said quietly, 2 weeks. "We have 2 weeks." They brainstormed desperately. Selling cattle, not enough time. Sarah barely slept, barely ate, watching their options dwindle. James grew more tense, more protective, barely letting her out of sight. "Run," he said finally, on the 8th night. "Pack light. Take the best horse. I'll tell him you left in the night. You'll take the ranch. I'll rebuild. Can't rebuild without you." Sarah touched his face. "I won't run. Not from this. Not from us." She'd spent too many years running. Time to face things head-on. The answer came from an unexpected source. Tom, the oldest ranch hand, cleared his throat at breakfast on day 9. "Begging pardon, but we couldn't help overhearing your trouble, Miss Sarah." "Tom, this isn't—" "We got savings," he interrupted. "Me and the boys. Nothing fancy, but we've been working here 3 years. Mr. Blackwood treats us fair, pays good wages. And you—" He looked at the other hands, who nodded encouragement. "You make this place home, ma'am. None of us want to see you hurt. Or the boss hurt. So we took a collection." He placed a canvas bag on the table. Sarah opened it with shaking hands. Bills and coins, hard-earned savings, months of labor. "It's not enough," Tom admitted. "Maybe 700, but it's yours if you want it." Sarah couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. James looked equally stunned. "We ain't got much," another hand added, "but we got your back, both of you." The solution crystallized in that moment. Sarah met James's eyes and saw him thinking the same thing. "The horses," she said. "The breeding stock," he agreed. "It's enough. Barely, but enough." They spent the next 3 days in a whirlwind, selling James's carefully cultivated breeding horses to neighboring ranches, combining it with the hand's contributions, watching the impossible sum slowly materialize. It meant setbacks for the ranch, years of work sold off, but it was enough. On day 13, Marcus Holloway returned, clearly expecting defeat. Sarah met him in the yard, with James at her side and a bank draft in her hand. $1,500, she said clearly. Paid in full. Marcus's face darkened as he read the draft. "How did you—" "Doesn't matter." James's voice was granite. "She's paid. You're done here." "This isn't over," Marcus snarled. "Yes," Sarah said firmly. "It is. You have no power over me anymore. I'm not afraid. I'm not alone. And I'm not leaving." She stepped closer to James, whose arm came around her waist. "I found something worth fighting for, so take your money and go." For a moment, Marcus looked like he'd argue. Then he pocketed the draft, mounted his horse, and rode out without another word. Sarah didn't watch him go, just turned into James's embrace and held on like he was the only solid thing in a spinning world. "It's over," she whispered. "No." James pulled back enough to cup her face. "It's beginning. Everything's beginning." He dropped to one knee right there in the muddy yard. Cowboys watching from the bunkhouse, sky vast and blue above them. "Sarah Mitchell, I'm not a fancy man. Can't offer you silk dresses or city life. But I can offer you my name, my home, my protection. Every damn day for the rest of my life." His gray eyes shone. "Marry me, not because of debts or convenience. Marry me because I love you more than breathing, and I want to spend every sunrise and sunset with you until we're both too old to remember why we started." Sarah dropped to her knees in front of him. Mud be damned. "James Blackwood, I'll marry you. Today, tomorrow, whenever you want. Because you taught me to trust again, to hope again." She kissed him softly. "To love again." His answering smile could have lit the darkness itself. "Today then, right now, we'll ride to town, wake up the preacher." "Yes." Sarah laughed through happy tears. "Yes to all of it." "Together?" "Together," James agreed, kissing her again as the ranch hands cheered. They married that afternoon in the small church in Copper Ridge, with the ranch hands as witnesses and the winter sun streaming through simple windows. Sarah wore a blue dress borrowed from the preacher's wife. James wore his cleanest shirt and looked at her like she'd hung the moon. The vows were traditional, but when James said, "I do," his voice carried the weight of absolute conviction. When Sarah repeated them, she meant every syllable. The kiss was chaste, for the audience, but his hand in hers spoke of all the passionate nights to come. They rode back to the ranch as husband and wife, Sarah's hand tucked into James's coat pocket for warmth, both of them grinning like fools. That night, he carried her over the threshold of the main house, their house now, and they christened their marriage with tender passion that gradually became fierce with want and trust and love. Later, wrapped in quilts and each other, James traced the fading bruises on her ribs, marks from a dead man's cruelty. "These will fade," he promised. "Replace every bad memory with good ones. Starting tonight." Sarah kissed his scarred knuckles. Already starting. You gave me a home. James, not just a house, a home. You gave me the same thing. He pulled her closer. My whole life was cold winter till you walked into that trading post. Then let's have a long, warm spring, Sarah murmured. Together. Together, he agreed, and proved it until dawn painted the mountains gold. Epilogue. 3 years later, Sarah Blackwood stood on the porch of the ranch house, one hand resting on her swollen belly, the other shading her eyes as she watched her husband teach their 2-year-old daughter to ride. James held little Margaret steady in the saddle, his laugh carrying across the prairie as the child squealed with delight. The ranch had thrived. The breeding program rebuilt, stronger than before. The hands, loyal and happy. And Sarah had found something she'd thought impossible. Joy. Pure, uncomplicated, everyday joy. She ran the ranch's accounts now, managed the expanding operations, and her baked goods had become so popular that townsfolk commissioned them for special occasions. She'd built something of her own while building a life with James. As if sensing her gaze, James looked up and smiled, that same smile that had first made her believe in second chances. He said something to their daughter, who immediately pointed at the house and shouted, "Mama!" They rode over together, the little girl chattering about the cows and the sky and everything her bright mind noticed. James lifted her down, then pulled Sarah into his arms, careful of her belly. "How are my girls?" he murmured against her hair. "Good. Happy." Sarah leaned into his strength, feeling the baby kick. "Blessed." "That's my line," James teased. But his eyes were serious as they met hers. "Mean it, though. Every day, I thank God you walked into that trading post." "Best day of my life," Sarah agreed. "Well, second best. Our wedding was first." "Fair." He kissed her softly, sweetly, full of promise. "Though I'd argue every day with you is the best day." Little Margaret tugged on their pants. "Inside! Cookies!" They laughed and followed their daughter inside, James's arm around Sarah's waist, their hands linked, their hearts beating the same rhythm. Together, together, together. The past couldn't touch them now. The scars remained, but they'd become part of a larger story, one of survival, redemption, and love that conquered fear. Sarah Blackwood had learned something profound in the Montana wilderness. Home wasn't a place. It was the strong, gentle man beside her, the children they'd raise, the life they built with calloused hands and courageous hearts. It was choosing every single day to hope, and she chose it gladly, joyfully, completely, together. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Sarah and James's journey? Did their love story touch your heart? Your feedback means the world to us, and it helps us create more stories that resonate with you. Until next time, may you find your own piece of the Wild West, wherever you are.